this is true for you, but I feel like just every conversation I have with everyone in my life right now ends up being about coronavirus. And
oh yeah,
and it's, for me, I don't know. We'll get there because it's just going to naturally come up. But I was thinking, kind of one positive, like, silver lining of all of this is the fact that it's afforded me an opportunity to do this with you, which is something we've been trying to get together to do for a while.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
like I mean, it's always tricky, especially with living in Oklahoma. Just like, I don't know, just going out and trying to do something like this, it's a little harder to do whenever you're, thousands of miles away from like everyone.
Yeah, of course, man. And I relate to that strongly because I've lived in a bunch of different places over the course of my life and the course of my career. And yeah, some of it can feel pretty distant, man.
Yeah, for real.
Does that get to you? Do you ever think about leaving Oklahoma? Because you're born and raised, right?
Yeah, I was born in Tulsa, moved to Oklahoma City like for college and shit. For the most part, I'm pretty okay with living out here. I mean, it would be nice maybe in the future to move out to LA or something, like a bigger city for a little bit.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't know. I like living out here. I have my whole team out here. The cost of living here is stupid cheap.
Man, I think about that all the time. I have a lot of love for Oklahoma City. I've had a lot of really good times there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely on the come up, like, especially in the past few years. We've definitely, like, gentrification and all that shit has been going down hard here.
I believe that. Well, and I'm this way. So when I go on tour, when I go to a different city, I almost always end up falling in love with a bunch of different cities in a row just because I'm there for a night. Usually you have a good time, you meet some cool people, it's a fun show. And then I just, every single time my brain just does the same thing where I'm like, maybe I should move here.
Yeah, right?
And especially with a place like Oklahoma City where the cost of living is really good. You get a lot for your money. There's still culture.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely.
And you said you grew up in Tulsa?
Yeah.
I think I've played in Tulsa maybe twice, at least once. I have one really early memory of playing a show in Tulsa, like before, not even really on a legitimate tour, but kind of like a self-booked, like MySpace days kind of show.
Yeah.
And it was just at some outdoor patio of a bar with like a terrible sound system. But I still remember it was super, super fun. I remember the crowd being crazy.
Oh, man, where could it have been? Shit. I can't even remember.
No, dude. I mean, and this was a long time ago. Wherever that was may not even exist anymore.
Yeah, right.
What was it like growing up there?
In Tulsa, it was pretty chill. We lived in the, I guess, the nicer part of town. Went to a school down there called Jenks, definitely South Tulsa. I don't know, it was pretty normal, nothing like super crazy.
Yeah. Was it the kind of sort of Midwest? I mean, it's not rural because Tulsa's a legit city, but was it the kind of, like slower pace of life? You're outside in the summers when you're a kid.
There were like, parks and places to go, like outdoorsy and shit. But there wasn't really anything big until like recently. So a lot of the time, I don't know, I personally just stayed at home, played games.
Yeah.
Worked, played some, when I was younger, played like guitar and drums and all that shit. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and some of that comes down to personality too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not the kind of person to go out and go exploring. I'd much rather just stay indoors working on shit.
Explore your mind.
Whoa.
Hey. That's fun though, man. I mean, were you always musical as a kid? Like what's some of your earliest musical memories, like when you were a little kid?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, my family wasn't like super musical. I know my oldest brother he was bass guitarist, was in a bunch of like jazz bands and shit. And like in, alternative bands, whatever you want to call it. One day, I think it was his band needed somewhere to put their drums, so they put them at our house. And the whole family just went wild for like a few months. Everyone was just like, oh, let me play the drums. Let me play the drums. And eventually I just started playing it and never stopped. Pissed off my whole family doing that. Just kind of taught myself how to play like basic beats and shit.
Well, they must have been used to it a little bit from your brother, right?
Yeah, but they didn't have a lot of band practice there.
Okay.
It was just kind of a place to put the drums. Eventually we just got the drums. But yeah, no, I like, taught myself by ear how to like play most beats. Started off with like...
So no lessons?
No lessons. I did in like, what was it? 6th grade, started taking bands for percussion and, kind of learned like the basics of like holding the sticks, flams, paradiddles, all that fun stuff. But for the most part, everything on the drum kit I was self-taught. Yeah, it's pretty easy to pick up drums, I feel like, because as long as you can like control your feet for the kick and the hi-hat.
It's a matter of coordination, I think, because I played a few different instruments, mainly trumpet, but I played a little bit of guitar, and then I tried to get into drums because I thought it was awesome when I was a kid. And there was something about it, I just didn't have the coordination for it. Like I had a great sense of rhythm and I understood what I was supposed to be doing. But there was just something about the coordination of all the different limbs that I don't know.
It's like, it's all there. Why can't my hands do this?
Right.
What the fuck?
But yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like that's maybe just a brain thing. I mean, I'm sure if I had kept at it for longer, I would have gotten better. But it definitely did not come naturally.
I don't know. I feel that.
Have you? Let me ask you this: to flip it back on you, has there been anything you've tried to pick up musically, either when you were younger or more recently, where it just didn't make sense, and you kind of had to say like, maybe this part just isn't for me, and I need to focus on what comes naturally.
Any sort of instrument where you have to blow into it. Okay. I have no idea how to control my mouth to actually do that.
Right. Yeah. That's hard.
Shit. I can't even like blow up a balloon. I don't have the mouth lung capacity to do any of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother thing coming from playing the trumpet. I mean, it's muscles in your mouth that you have to build up. It's, just like lifting weights or working out, but it's all these tiny muscles in your mouth.
It's just, I don't know. I never had it. I never knew like what exactly I need to work on.
Right.
So I just kind of gave it up.
Having a good teacher is probably part of that too.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, my drum teacher, I think was, I don't even remember his name, and I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but it was just like the guy at the Guitar Center,
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. I'm sure he was as non-enthused as I was.
But besides drums, I think around the age of like 14 or around then, I don't know, I had always wanted to play guitar, but never really knew how to. Until I found it was a fucking Red Hot Chili Peppers, by the way, tab book for like all the instruments for every song.
Right.
And I looked up the song Can't Stop, and something just clicked. I saw the guitar tab and realized, oh wait, 6 strings, or like 6 lines, 6 strings. All these things are numbered, maybe. 5, 7. 3rd line, okay. Do. Oh my god! I like ran to all of my like family. Was just like, guys, look, I can play guitar.
Oh, that's hilarious! It's the math of it, right? Figuring out that it's all kind of numerical.
Yeah, no. And after that, it was progressively just teaching myself to play guitar.
And were you playing in bands and all that kind of thing in your teen years?
Oh yeah, no. All throughout high school, performed in like, God, I can't remember how many bands. It's funny because it wasn't that I was playing with a lot of people. I was just playing with different combinations of like the same 8 people that were like, oh, okay, I don't really like this band. Maybe we can do a band with just these people. They're like, these people don't really work. How about just like us two do something?
Which is kind of the same, I feel like, as high school friendships work in general, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Is you kind of find like your larger friend group, but then inside of that, you have the closer people and the people you don't relate to so much. And over the course of a couple of years, 4 years, you know, you get closer to certain people, you move away from certain people. Bands are totally the same way.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, actually, like towards the end of the high school, into college for a few years, was actually in this band with like 3 of my closest friends. Well, at the time, I still consider them close. But yeah, we played like, we got really into like progressive-y music, specifically math rock stuff. Like Fall of Troy, or like really aggressive, I guess, math stuff. So we tried to be our own version of that.
And for the people who might not know, when you say math rock, what does that mean to you?
So it's hard to just sum it up with a few words, but it's basically like a way of like playing your instruments, kind of using really, or just like using more abstract time signatures or combining them together to make like long phrases. Like say there's a song called 26 is Dancier Than 4 by This Town Needs Guns. In the last like outro of the song, there's a section where it's literally 26-4. That's the time signature. But it's split up into like what, 4 bars of 5/4 and then 2 bars of 3. So like add it all together, you have 26.
Right. Which is insane.
Yeah, right. And it's like also this like unique kind of way of playing the instruments too. Like, cause you're not just doing like, you know, straightforward stuff. It's like a lot of like weird tunings.
It's kind of doing it the wrong way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like playing everything wrong, but it's sounding right.
Right. And I we'll get back to that point later because I feel like there's a lot of that ethos in your music today too. But one other point I wanted to make while you were telling that story is that another part of math rock, I think, are the band names and the song titles.
Oh, yeah.
Because the one you just gave, what was the name of the song?
26 is Dancier Than 4.
Right, yeah.
Like, who the fuck comes up with that?
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, again, I'll take it back to you again. I mean, you have song titles like You'll Hate Me More Than I'll Miss You.
Oh, yeah.
Between the Devil and the Sea.
Yeah, that definitely is like that, like emo-y, math rocky kid coming up.
Yeah.
It's also fun just to make like really ridiculous titles.
Oh,
when
no,
you can't really think of anything.
Absolutely. And there's once you sort of realize that you can go as far with it as you want, I feel like you might as well just go all the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Who's going to stop you?
And was your school a small school? Was it kind of everybody knew everybody?
Oh, God, no. This was like one of the biggest schools in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
Like our graduating class had like almost 1,000 people in it. The whole graduation, like, high school graduation ceremony took like a whole day because it was like morning for prep, afternoon, the actual thing.
Right, of course.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. It just takes hours to cycle through everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
That just makes me think about it. I wonder if they, ranked it in any way. Like, at the Grammys, they have like the portion of the award ceremony that they don't show on TV.
Yeah, right?
It's like only the valedictorians get the prime slot here.
Yeah, like S through Z, you guys are good. We kind of get the gist of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you take the paper, you walk on the stage.
Well, yeah. Just take it. Just go.
Yeah. Well, it's in the mail. Go home.
Oh, man. I actually had a friend fuck, what was the walk called? It was like the troll walk, where he's just like.
Wait, is that something I'm supposed to know?
I thought so. It's a pretty old like meme or whatever.
Okay.
But I mean, he was a year ahead of me. But apparently, whenever he walked on stage, he did that across the entire stage. A lot of the people, like a lot of the teachers on stage, were visibly pissed.
Of course.
Just
Of course.
like-
Yeah. I mean, there's always one. There was a guy, there's a guy in my graduating class who's actually still a very close friend of mine who I'm not going to name, but he wore a tie to our graduation that he had printed himself. So he printed a tie, and it was a magic eye. And if you know those magic eyes where if you like stare at it at a certain distance.
Yeah.
And so if you stared at it at the right distance, it said, "Fuck you," and then our principal's name. Who was the person handing out the diplomas.
Oh my God, that is incredible.
Yeah, that was.
Did anybody like stare at it long enough to like actually notice?
I mean, all of us knew what it was, but no officials saw it. Which was probably for the best.
Oh boy.
But
fucking pranksters.
So I mean, what was your group? What was your scene in high school? Who were you hanging out with? Was it just the band dudes, the band women?
No, it was mainly just like the cool thing about having such a big school is that like by the end of like high school, everybody basically knew everyone. Like as long as you're cool, like you can go hang out with whoever. But my core group was just like me and like maybe 5 other people. Like I wouldn't even know what to name us. Probably just like really weird dorks.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, but the thing is that there were so many of those little like really weird dorks kind of group. So we were like the really weird dorks who also played instruments and were really into like Guitar Hero and Rock Band.
Right. Yeah. I
like,
mean,
almost obsessively.
Well, to be honest, man, isn't that the same as what we do now? I think most producers and DJs are really weird dorks of some variety.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's kind of a given. Like, you know, you don't really sit around learning audio production because you were like the star athlete or whatever. You do it because, I mean, it's like hundreds of thousands of hours poured into just learning really nerdy shit.
Yeah.
Just so you can make cool styling stuff.
100%. And I would even take it farther to say, even the people in our scene who aren't the most technical producers, maybe even somebody who uses a ghostwriter for most of their songs and mainly is just a performer, they're still a weird dork. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like just wanting to live this lifestyle and do these kinds of things. I think automatically you're a weird dork.
Oh, yeah. No, it's like, either you're totally oblivious of like the lifestyle, or it's just you're a giant dork. What it is.
Basically, yeah. Was it a happy time for you? Like teen years, high school?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Especially around the time that we all started smoking weed.
Then it got a lot happier.
Things got a lot better. Yeah, no, I actually did most of my like drug experimentation in like the high school, early college years. But once I moved out to like Oklahoma City, didn't really like do any of that shit anymore.
Well, that's good, man. That's like the European model, is kind of get it out of the way at the start. And then by the time you're ready to be an adult, you can handle it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I've only just recently started going back to smoking weed. I can thank the Jaws tour for that.
That's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. I mean, like everybody on there smoked. So it was just natural that I was like, okay, I'll try like a hit.
Right.
And yeah.
I think it's funny, man. Not even that smoking weed is like a bad thing or that it's bad that you would go back to it. But when you're on a tour like that, it's such a different, universe that you're living in.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
it's kind of the
100%.
only time, because in my mind, like I have pretty rigid rules for my life that I follow that just keep me healthy and happy, you know, just the random shit you pick up along the way. But the second I go on a long tour, I mean, you're living on this weird little bus with a small group of people. You're kind of just making up your new life for a few months. And all of that can go out the window so quickly. It's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, no. Like I had every intention on that tour to like eat healthy, you know, try and do some semblance of a sleep schedule. That was pretty much out the window by like day 3.
Yeah. How long of a tour? That was like a long tour too, right?
Yeah, I was on it for like I think about 4-ish weeks, like 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Can't really, or no, it was like 3.5, I think.
Well, that's 4. Just long enough to pretty much throw out all of your regular habits, and then just short enough that you don't get established in new patterns by the time it ends.
Yeah, right. The thing that was like really grueling about, or at least the like section that I was on, is that for like 3 weeks straight, it was 6 shows or like 6 days of shows in a row, and then 1 day off. So like, most of the time was just spent trying to kill the boredom because there was generally nothing to do.
Yeah.
And like,
so what did you do? How did you keep yourself occupied?
I started producing on the road.
Was that a new thing? You didn't do that much before?
Yeah, no, I hadn't really done that before. Because I have my PC here at home that I try to produce. Like that's where I get the most like bulk of my tracks like finished and mixed and whatever. But I found that like just writing little things here and there on the road and then taking them back home and working on them was a big game changer for me, at least on this last tour.
Well, when you write music in general, how do you operate? Is it you kind of have a core idea that sparks something and then you work through it and sort of, you know, finish, quote unquote, the song or the idea before you move on to something else? Or do you tend to hop around to a bunch of different ideas and go back and forth?
It kind of depends on like what section or like where I'm at working on a song. Like if I just hit a brick wall, I'll generally just try and hop to a different like project or idea. A lot of the time though, like getting my ideas together, it's not really like I sit down and I'm like, I have an idea for this. It's a lot of like, I'm just going to play around with some shit and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
Yeah, of course. And I think one thing you're known for, or one thing that I think caught a lot of people's ears initially, is your crazy sound design and these, you know, very unique sounds and ideas that you put out there. And with that, I could totally see that mode of operation. If you're just sort of more of an explorer, you know, like a sonic explorer, being like, oh, let's try to make something crazy. Let's make something I haven't heard before. And then later you figure out how that fits into the form of a song, right?
Exactly. Only like, I mean, I hate to say it, but only recently, I've only recently been more conscious about like the songwriting process, like trying to create actual songs instead of just like, okay, here's the intro, here's the build, drop, break, build, drop, outro. Just like trying to tie everything together a little more to give it more of like a
story arc, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel you, man. And I think that's evident in a bunch of your new songs. Like I was just listening to a bunch of your more recent stuff before we started talking. And there really is, you can tell there's an evolution. You can tell you're sort of, I don't know if it's thinking about it differently, but it really does sound like an evolution. And it's interesting to me to think about, because you're a pretty prolific producer. You know, you put out stuff a lot, but which is good, I think. But I think it also allows an outside observer, i.e. me, to sort of look at the graph or chart of like things you've been putting out. And it's really changed a lot, man, when you look at it as a whole.
Yeah, no, especially going back to like even a few years ago, like the stuff I was making back then, it feels totally different. It almost feels like when somebody says that they like my music, I almost have to be like, oh yeah, which ones?
Yeah, what
like
era?
which era are you like? Because we're moving pretty quick here.
Well, yes, some of your most recent ones, including the ones I named earlier, what's it called? You'll Hate Me More Than I'll Miss You, and a few others.
Yeah.
The remix you just did for Slander and a few others. There's this way more emphasis on these melodic leads and ideas, and this kind of like it's not 8-bit exactly, but it's this almost like to me it's almost like a machine overloading kind of thing.
Yeah,
which I really liked, and I was wondering if that was just sort of something you were exploring at the time, or if you sort of have a vision for where you want to take it going forward.
I definitely do think that, like, it's interesting that you say that, because that's kind of the vibe I was going for, especially with the Slander remix, just like, because I feel like a lot of my stuff is rooted in chaos, but like having a melodic sort of chaos is an interesting concept to me. Just like another, not like totally shifting gears and going like all melodic, but just having that be another like side of what I put out. Like say whenever I started experimenting with house music, it wasn't like I shifted to house. It was just, trying other stuff out.
Yeah, of course. And what I like about that is it's a cool way to think about it, because I think a lot of times in bass music, something is either heavy or it's melodic, and it can only be one of those things, right?
Yeah.
And that like distinction is fine, but it has gotten kind of boring to me. I think it's mostly been done at this point. And then I hear something like the songs of yours that we're talking about, and it's somewhere in the middle, and it's way harder to define. And hearing you talk about the chaos of it, I think that's cool. To me, that's like you found a different way to be heavy and chaotic that isn't just, a screeching metal sound, and but also isn't just stack of chords.
Yeah, exactly. I think just like being more fluid in terms of like how I categorize like genres helped a lot too. Like, cause I don't know, when I sit down to like say, if I'm feeling like making a house track, I'm not thinking like, oh, I have to like do such and such to it. It's more like, what can I bring to it instead of like what it can bring to me?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. What do I have to offer to this idea?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like not just like trying to make another, like another bass house track, trying to like, kind of thinking of it as like a musical blob that just kind of slowly takes over everything.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. And I think that's a key point for any younger producers who may be listening too, is that I think early on, it's so easy to just want to make something that sounds good. And so, you can make a track in a certain style, and it's so easy if you finally just accomplish making a good sounding track that then you just want to get it out there because it sounds good now. But there has to be that other component of, well, how is this different from anything anyone else has done?
Yeah, I mean, like it's definitely hard starting out to like have that mindset, because when you're starting out, you're just like, hey, I want to make cool shit. You're not really thinking of like the brand or like the idea behind the music. You're just thinking like, hey, this is a cool sound. I want to try and make something like that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I do want to be careful, because there's something about those early days and not knowing anything that I think is so powerful. And sometimes most exciting music can be made out of that. So it's somewhere, agreed. I think the truth is somewhere in between these two sides we're talking about, right? Where it's, you don't want to overthink it. You don't want to be too afraid and second guessing yourself. But then there has to be some kind of perspective that you're not just sort of copying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which, I don't have any solution for that. So good luck, producers. But
we all had the problem and somehow we did it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, and to take it back to you. So, coming out of high school, going into college, what did you go to college for? What did you think you were going to be doing at that point?
I actually went for audio engineering.
Oh, there you go. So you already knew. Yeah,
no, I knew at a very young age that no matter what, I wanted to do something with music. It wasn't until I think it was early. Oh wait, no, it must have been I think around 2011 is when I found. I remember the two songs because I kept hearing about dubstep and was like, oh, okay. At that point, I was super deep into just finding the most obscure music. So I was like, fine, fine, I'll try out some dubstep. I downloaded Bass Nectar's Here We Go and Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, the song.
Yeah.
I remember going to school one morning, listening to Here We Go, just being like, damn, that's cool. And then listening to Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites being like, fuck!
Oh, man.
It definitely awakened something in me. And at that point in my, I guess, music timeline, whatever, I was really into these bands like Fall of Troy, Terra Milos, who were super into just making these crazy sounds just out of their guitar pedals. And I thought that was so cool. I always wanted just this big ass pedal board with just all these different guitar effects and just trying to find weird combinations to route them and just make crazy sounds.
Right.
And then when I heard Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, it was almost gave it a context to oh, I can fuck around with sounds and it can sound like this.
Right.
What?
Yeah, that's interesting. And of course, then the idea comes to mind that, hey, I don't even need a band. I don't have to organize schedules.
Exactly. That was the game changer for me.
And so were you all self-taught again? So did you just go get some production program?
Yeah, no, I got FL Studio I think around summer of 2011. At that point in high school, there was it was this thing, if you signed up for it for a year in high school, you would go to a separate school for either the morning or afternoon, and that would count for your credits or whatever. And the class that I went to was broadcast sound engineering.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so we had a very rough crash course on music production along with some other stuff. So I remember the first song I made was in that class. They had fucking, what was it, Acid, the DAW.
Yep.
And just a shitload of Sony loops that I just compiled together and made the shittiest fucking dubstep song with the most random elements. There was a fucking Mexican guitar, finger picked, a bunch of weird sounds. I think at one point I had my friend use a vocoder saying, I love to eat poop.
Yeah, sounds about right.
It's just being dumb.
I mean, that could be a dubstep song in 2020, man.
Oh, yeah, no. Things really don't change.
Yeah.
But after that, that summer I got FL Studio, tried to remember what I learned in that class, could not. So a lot of my early stuff, they had ideas, but it was just god awful to listen to because I had no idea what I was doing. I was just turning knobs. I was like, oh yeah, EQ, it looks kind of cool when it looks like this.
Right.
And I had no idea what I was doing with any of these plugins. I made some cool sounds in Harmor, I think.
Yeah,
think
well,
that was it.
Harmer's still cool. It's not one that I use or even know that well, but I have some friends who still are obsessed with Harmer.
Yeah, yeah. For a few years, I was like, me and my friend were super into it, just like getting some really weird fucking sounds out of it. But yeah, no. All in all, like I wasn't really like totally taking it seriously. Like, I mean, I wanted to do it and I was pursuing it actively, but it took like going to college for it and like fully committing to it that like everything just started like clicking.
Well, were you committing in the sense of I want to produce electronic music, or was it more that you were sort of committing to doing something with engineering and with music, and that this is just kind of where it ended up?
It was definitely committing to something with music and engineering. And while I was in school, I was, continually working on my stuff.
Was it a good school experience, by the way? Because I feel like audio engineering schools can go one of two ways.
Oh, no, ours was actually really good. It's the Academy of Contemporary Music. Everybody in there is very knowledgeable. Like, they know their stuff. Like, fucking shit. Like, I had a few teachers in there that, like, pretty much taught me the basics of everything. And they taught it so well that, like, it all just made sense. Like, breaking everything down to, like, okay, here's what sound is. Here's, like, compressing and refracting air. That's all it is. Here's how we can affect it. And it was all just like, oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And then, like, once we got into, like, Ableton, which I was kicking and screaming the whole time and made fun of by my classmates for using FL Studio, finally made the switch to Ableton and had a few teachers there that, like, just basically taught me, like, everything about every plugin, which was great. And
That's
then I
really valuable, actually, yeah.
Yeah, and then just took that home and was like, oh, okay, so that's what that does. But what if I do this to it instead?
Is that the way your mind has always worked? I hear you saying that, and I hear you talking about, the crazy sounds you would make with the pedal boards. And it seems like there's a theme of sort of always being curious, not only about what you're being shown, but how much further you could take it and, other ideas you could try with it. Have you always just sort of thought about stuff that way? Is that just, what fun is to you, is sort of that sandbox mentality?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Like, shit, even back in the days of like guitars or playing in actual bands, just like, I don't know, trying to think outside the box, have fun with it. Just doing the same thing over and over again just sounds boring.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about that, because there's certain producers who will make a song that does really well, and then for the next, 6 months, 12 months, every song they put out kind of sounds like the popular song of theirs. And and I've always thought about that model, and I get it. I get why you do it, but I literally don't think I could do it. And not in the sense of like I have some moral superiority, but I think like I have like a deficiency that I don't think I would be able to like just make the same thing again.
My problem is that like, say Extraterrestrial, my song with Company, it's a fan favorite. A lot of people like it. The problem with that lead sound is that it is almost impossible to use it for anything besides making that sound or sounds that are super similar to it. Like, I've tried doing everything I can to it. I don't know.
Right.
It's like just the way that it was set up is just perfect for that sound. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, now that you say that and I'm thinking about it, I would guess that a lot of your sounds do not rank high in reusability.
They don't. I try my damnedest, but like I have folders of like, oh hey, lead chains or whatever from like previous songs, trying to recontextualize them is not easy.
Right.
Just because They're very specific.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And it seems like that sort of evolved for you pretty early on. Would you agree with that? Like even some of your earliest stuff that I was listening to that's, up on Spotify, even the early stuff, like maybe it's not quite as advanced as where you are now, but it's still kind of unique and weird and sort of unidentifiable.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just, I don't know. I came out the gate like that, I guess.
Well, I'm curious. I have a couple theories about it, and you tell me if any of it rings true to you. One is the idea of where you were, that you were in Oklahoma and that you were a little separate from, the scene at large. Obviously, you can get involved online, and we're all seeing what everyone else is doing anyway. But I sort of wonder if it was, I have to imagine, you weren't going out to shows all the time. The scene is much smaller.
I mean, definitely starting out, I guess it wasn't until like my first few releases that I just didn't really go out. I didn't know where to go out.
Right.
I was also like too young to really go anywhere and like do anything.
Yeah, you couldn't get into the bars, all that.
Yeah. There was actually there is one party in Oklahoma City called Robotic Wednesdays that my friends, they had been, I call them my friends now, but I met them all through going to robotic.
Shout out to all they're my friends too. And the reason they're my friends is because they booked me for robotic a long, long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And we've all just been friends since. But that whole crew is some of my favorite people.
When I started going there, they've been doing it for almost 9 years. And I don't know, like meeting them kind of like brought me into my first real taste of like any sort of scene. Because before that, I was literally just like by myself, maybe had like 2 or 3 friends from like my old friend group that were into this. Everyone else I knew wasn't really into it. So I was just kind of living in my own bubble for so long.
Was that hard in the sense of like, what am I doing? How does this fit in? Is there a future in this?
I definitely had those doubts all the time, but it was also I was also in the mindset of like, okay, I'll figure all this out later. I'm just gonna head down, do my best work, and let everything else happen.
Well, that's a very mature attitude to have when you're just starting off.
Yeah. It wasn't until I met one friend in ACM, the music college, that like he kind of took me under his wing. Like he saw like, oh shit, this guy's actually really good. Kind of took me under his wing, introduced me to everybody, really helped me make like all my connections. In fact, Graves, Hawaii Graves.
Yeah.
He actually linked us together back in like 2015.
Oh, no way.
We ended up doing a track together called Holy Mountain, and that was really the first like major break that I had.
Right. I remember that track. And that was sort of when Graves was coming up himself, right?
Oh, yeah. No, like every month he would put out like just a new track that was just giant. He made a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, everyone was paying attention. I mean, everyone's still paying attention to him because he's great.
Oh,
but yeah. I remember when he was on that first wave.
I was just happy to be there. Then from there, I saw like all these people that I was following on SoundCloud were following me back. So I'd hit them up, be like, hey, here's some new music. And actually got a lot of my longest friendships from that. Like freaking Heckler, G-Rex. G-Rex kind of introduced me to like his friends in LA, so like Company and like all those guys. I don't know. So it's just like a snowball effect of just because this one guy took me under his wing, everything kind of progressed from that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, man. And we all need, that person, whoever that may be in our own lives. There's if you look back, there's always somebody who kind of opened the first door.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And I liked what you said too about, once you started noticing other people that you admired following you, that, you just, send them some music and just kind of keep it moving. I think that's the way to do it and the way to build long-term relationships, right? As opposed to immediately being like, oh, you're great, let's work on something,
Yeah, no, like at that point, like working with these people were like the farthest thing from my mind. I was just like, hey, let's be friends first. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Which is the only, I mean, to be honest, the only people I really want to work with are people I'm friends with anyway.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, like not that I'm not excited if a big opportunity comes along, but I would never hunt for that. I'd always rather just work with my friends.
Well, see, like I definitely love working with my friends more than anything, but I also like working with either smaller people or people that have a really unique sound.
Yeah.
Just something that's like, whoa, that's different. I want to try working with you to see what we can do. Like, say, for instance, this kid, Ace Ara, who's making this, like, melodic rhythm stuff.
He's dope, man. I like him.
Oh, yeah. Asked him, if he had anything to work on, and I actually need to get back to working on it.
You got to go.
But, yeah, no, it's just, I enjoy working with people who, are kind of in the same realm of like they have their own sound, they have their own unique take on things, and I don't know, those are the kind of people that I want to surround myself with.
Well, I like that, man, because I think this was actually another thought that occurred to me before we started talking was, you do have a unique sound, and I think you occupy a unique place, but maybe the hard part of that is that you don't immediately fit into one scene or one group. And
oh yeah, no, I'm kind of like that kid in high school who didn't really have any like one core group. He just kind of floated around between all of them, just like, hey guys, high five. And then he goes back to his home in Oklahoma, is just like, well,
sitting in the bedroom we're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, this is it.
But yeah, but what I like about what you're saying about collaborating and what you look for in people is you're sort of building your own group and you're building the scene that you want to see, right? By reaching out to people who maybe are similar minded or who you like in the same way that someone else might like you. Exactly.
It's been my mentality, like, ever since I started like collabing with people, like even early on, if somebody, it didn't matter who they were, if they sent me something and I was like, oh wow, that's actually really cool, it's like, yeah, let's work on it, let's go.
Well, here's a question for you. So we've talked a lot about how you've sort of always had this unique mindset and always just wanted to make what you wanted to make. And I'm curious, either when you started going to shows originally or when you started playing your own shows and got more into the scene at large, did that change the way you were writing music? Did you have any realizations about sort of the way you would go about songwriting and how it fit into the greater context of like a live presentation or another DJ playing the song, that kind of thing?
Yes, because before then, the songs I'm talking about now are nowhere to be found because they weren't like officially released or anything. Yeah. But the songs I was writing back then definitely didn't have that mindset of like, oh, this is going to be played out in a DJ set. It was more like, I'm going to write this because it sounds cool this way. But definitely like, going back to the robotic guys, they're like last year or so that they were putting on that Robotic Wednesdays. One of the like resident headline DJs or whatever, like resident direct support, the person he played with left to go work somewhere else, so he just kind of let me play. So like every week for like a year, we would go back to back, either closing out the night or direct support for whoever was playing, which honestly changed a lot of like how I view like playing out a show, kind of making it up until recently, making it a party, making it fun, making it so it's not like just the same thing over and over and over and over again, having variety.
Well, and that's a great training ground because Robotic was always good. They brought in all different kinds of artists.
Oh yeah.
And you'd have to, warm up for lots of different vibes.
Yeah, it was to the point where like every week, me and the guy I was playing with would have to just kind of sit down and be like, okay, what are we going for this week? Because like say when we opened for Breathe Carolina, at first we were like, yeah, we'll just play like all popular shit.
Right.
And in the end, it didn't matter because the fans that were there to see Breathe Carolina did not care what we played because they weren't going to react regardless.
Right.
So it was also a good lesson of like, oh, cool. You're not going to win over the crowd all the time. You just kind of have to give it your best.
Sure. And, I think the flip side of that is that it's super possible to overthink it too, right? Because,
yes.
You think, oh, how do I open for this person? How do I play the perfect set that everyone will love? And then, the reality is they're there to see the headliner. And as long as you do a decent job, everyone's going to be fine with it,
Oh, no, that's still something that I'd struggle with is just overthinking, especially when it comes to sets, because I'm trying to, especially nowadays, trying to like do something, I don't know, just like unique, I guess is the right word. Just trying not to play the same, like, crowd hype songs, whatever. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just trying to.
It's good you're doing that, man, because up until recently when people were still playing shows, it was boring most of the time. I think for those of us who play these shows, multiple times a week, every week, it really, and I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but just overall, the scene was getting a little stale. And,
it really was.
I don't know. And it's weird because the shows still work. The crowds, I think, still had a great time. But I do think there was this sense with a lot of artists of kind of just this, we need to figure out a new thing here.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I think it's so cool to see people like Sudden Death doing these like super over the top conceptual performances, because it really... It shows what dance music can be, or like, bass music can be when you have the right idea behind it.
Yes, 100%. And it's taking the idea and pushing it farther again. It's like what we were talking about with the song titles and all of that. It's, if you're going to do it a little bit, you got to do it a lot bit. You just go all the way.
Don't half-ass two things. Whole ass.
Just one ass. That's
one ass it.
One big ass. I don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, fuck.
Do you have, how about for you, I think you've been opening up a lot of tours over the last year. Was the Jaws tour still going on when everything got shut down, or had that finished already?
I think maybe like a few dates were left. I'm not sure. I was only on it like for the middle.
Okay, so your part was done.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure you had plenty of shows that are now canceled or postponed in general.
It's funny because after the Jaws tour, I actually had like the only show that I had after that was like a show. I think it was supposed to be this weekend, which is obviously canceled.
Right.
And after that, it's like the end of May for festival season, which I'm sure those will get pushed back too. So it's not like I've had a lot of shows canceled. In fact, this was supposed to be like my 2 months off. So
oh yeah, okay.
It kind of worked out, at least in that sense.
Indeed.
But
but
I mean, now looking forward, it's like, oh shit. Well, it'll probably be like few more months before anything actually happens.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was talking about this with people in my Discord yesterday where we just don't know yet. I mean, I think, I don't think festivals are happening this year. I don't think so. The big ones, I just don't think they're happening this year.
No. Best case scenario, maybe in like fall. I just don't really see like giant gatherings like that.
It's too soon, man. It would look so. Can you imagine if just a couple months from now there was, I mean, of course, I say this, and right now there are idiots protesting cities being shut down and big groups of people
God
standing outside right now. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, and we're all just going to kill ourselves. But
who knows? This might be the beginning of the end. Strap in, boys.
Hey, man. I mean, for those of us who are already pretty good at staying inside all the time, I feel like we've been trading for it.
Oh, yeah. No, like... fuck. There were like those years in college where like I would literally just like go to class and then go back home and didn't do anything. Like at that point I didn't have any friends or anything. So like I'm used to this. I'm just happy that I'm living with my girlfriend who has been working from home. So like have somebody to endure this with instead of just doing it alone.
Yeah, no, that's key. Being totally solo, and shout out to anyone out there who is, because there's a lot of people.
Like
that's tough.
Damn.
I
feel for you.
Yeah, 100%, man. But I hope people are, getting by either via connecting online in some way, whether it's connecting with your friends, whether it's watching some stupid DJ do a stupid live stream. Whatever it is. Even if you're just watching us talk shit right now,
Yeah.
Have you been doing any of the live streaming? Are you doing any of that?
So I did one for a Dub Rebellion. It was like the way they have their stream set up is that they generally have everybody like recording in one room. Yeah, so like, they'll trade off or whatever.
Yeah.
There's not really anybody else that they could market in terms of Dub Rebellion that live in Oklahoma City. So instead, I did the 3.5 hours by myself.
Ooh. The real deep dive.
Dude, it was a shit show. I mean, it was fun. Like, I just kept getting more and more. Like, you could literally watch all 3 hours and see me get progressively more and more drunk. Just like...
you can slowly watch your mind disintegrate.
By about like hour 3, you can see me just be like, are we done yet?
Were you talking about production, or was this just sort of all over the...
No, this was just a 3.5 hour DJ set.
Oh, the whole thing was a DJ set. I got you. Yeah.
So I mean, it was a little easier, but still just like, damn.
Well,
it was a lot of fun though.
Oh, dude, I love long DJ sets. I mean, I grew up playing long DJ sets. Like some of my earliest gigs were, the sort of totally thankless things where you just play all night at somewhere where they don't even care that there's a DJ.
Yeah, no.
Which was great training and all that, but it actually... I've been wanting to get back to doing longer sets recently because it's almost like distance running to me, where it's like, it's fun at first and then you hit a wall and it's really rough. But if you're able to sort of push through it, and I don't know if you were able to for that stream, but I think when you're able to push through it and really end up in an unexpected place and catch that second wind and reconnect with the crowd or whatever it is that brings you back, man, that's the best feeling in the world.
Oh, yeah. Now, I definitely wish I would have gone in a little more prepared because at that point I just had like a giant list of like, it's mainly all dubstep because I figured Dub Rebellion.
Yeah.
They'd probably want dubstep.
It's in the name,
But definitely, like, if I had more stuff planned, like more just stuff all over the place, it would have been a lot more easy. Sure. It would have been a lot easier, a lot more fun, definitely.
Sure.
But
yeah, which makes sense. And I think that's something people don't always realize about you too, is that, if you look at all of the music you've put out over time, there's a lot of range in there. I think you get lumped into dubstep because it's just the easy categorization to make.
Yeah.
But how do you think about yourself? Do you consider yourself any particular kind of producer?
I just say bass music. Yeah. It's the easiest. It's a cop-out, but it's the easiest because, like, and I'd like to think it reflects in my sets, too, is that, like, I do have stuff that's just, like, all over the place. Like, I have a fucking musical freedom a house track. I have a bunch of Never Say Die releases. I have a Wakan EP, a bunch of like remixes and stuff with them. It's just all over the place. So I like to have that reflect on or in my sets live too, where, we'll start off at like 100 BPM, play some like glitch hoppy stuff, and then like move it on up to house, move it on up to dubstep, go up to drum and bass. Fuck it, who cares? Let's go.
Right. Was that ever a concern or a discussion with you or with your team of sort of how do we present this in a way that people are going to connect with it and sort of follow your journey when it's harder to categorize?
Oh yeah, no, we've had a lot of discussions about it. Right now, our main thing is keeping the visual aesthetic consistent, so it's a little easier to like latch on to whatever I'm doing.
Well,
Especially
and
with,
you started releasing a lot of your own music now too, right?
Yeah, just going the self-release route. I've just found it's a lot easier to do than dealing with labels.
Yeah.
Especially there was a point last year where like we released with a shitload of labels last year, and twice there were overlapping releases on the same day.
Oh, man.
Well, the first time it happened, I was like, okay, this cannot happen again. A few months later, it happened again, and I was like, okay, seriously, not again. 2 weeks ago,
Oh, man.
it happened again. Oh, wait, no, last week. Yeah. I don't know. I enjoy having total freedom to just do whatever I want, like aesthetically, with the release, hype up, everything. I just like having full control over it.
Well, and you mentioned earlier, we were talking about creative live shows and sudden death, sort of taking it to extremes. When you get to the point of being the consistent headliner and you can do your own bus tours and all that, which I think you're well on your way to, do you have a vision of what that show would look like?
A loose vision, but I don't want to give too much away.
That's fair. Well, we'll talk a little bit. Talk a little bit just about the aesthetic, the branding, whatever you want to call it, that you want for yourself. Because you're talking about your self-releasing. You can kind of control the look of it, the presentation of it. What ideas do you want to put out there?
It's always a question that I have a hard time putting into or like forming into words, because like I have a lot of like just loose concepts. I think the closest thing I could put it to is like 9 Inch Nails' branding, or like their kind of like presentation live. Just more like emphasis on kind of telling a story musically throughout an entire set. As opposed to just playing like one thing after another, kind of like having everything like morph into each other.
Right.
So it's just like kind of almost like, was it Justice Across the Universe?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. They're a live album where like, I mean, it's obviously different styles of performing, but like that's kind of something I'd like to gravitate towards, or like almost live remixing tracks so that everything kind of flows into each other. It's like very fluid.
Sure. And that, I think 9 Inch
it.
Nails is a good reference because that's a group that has wildly different sounds throughout their career, from, the hardest metal song to a complete ambient song, Yeah,
exactly. But like it all fits within like their world that they're presenting.
Would you consider doing an album? Is that something you've thought about?
I've thought about it, and I don't think I'm ready for it. Like I feel like I would need a solid enough idea for it that like without it just feels like a collection of songs.
Right.
I do have a few ideas for like conceptual EPs. In fact, I had one that was supposed to come out at the end of this month, or like we were aiming for it to come out at the end of this month, but everything went to shit. And it's like, well, maybe we can push it back.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Where is your head at as far as releasing music right now? Are you just in wait and see mode?
I have a lot of songs, so I'm just going to start putting them out.
Yeah. Especially
because I feel like in the past like year and a half, I I haven't really put out a lot of solo songs. It's either been remixes or collabs. Especially last year, I think I only put out like a shitload of songs, but only like 3 or 4 of them were like solo songs.
Right. Yeah.
So that's definitely like, because it's another problem that I feel like when trying to get a sense of like what I am, it's tough because you're judging it based off of like remixes or collabs, where like I kind of leaned more into what the original song was doing or what the other person does.
Well,
so I think like
that's a weird thing too, right? Is all of a sudden when you sort of break out, quote unquote, and you're having a lot of just having a lot of fun, and all of a sudden everyone is kind of paying attention to what you're doing, and lots of people want to work with you or want you to remix their song. It's hard to say no, right? At a certain point, even if it would be a good idea at the time.
We've definitely stepped away from like accepting everything, because that was definitely the plan when me and my team first like actually started working together, was just to be everywhere. We were all well aware that like I was able to just make whatever, so we kind of leaned into it instead of just picking one thing or like trying to be like a dubstep guy or trying to be a trap guy, just doing everything.
Sure.
And now that we've kind of reached the point where we've done as much as we can, kind of like reeling it back and establishing our own identity while being able to do everything.
Right. Which makes sense. And I think that's a smart way to do it. Do you when you do collaborate with people, do you approach the music writing process differently depending on who you're working with? Or
oh yeah, like 100%.
Yeah. Let's do an example. Like say, you work with Marshmello, right?
Yeah.
Do you how is that different than how you would say approach the remix you did for RL Grime? Like, do you think about those two things in different ways?
100%. Definitely. I always try to think of context, or try to contextualize everything. Because like with the RL Grime remix, like I knew what people expected when they thought of Pressure by RL Grime. So I tried to think of a way to recontextualize it, to give it a new light. As for the Marshmello collab, he had actually hit me up saying that he really liked Extraterrestrial, and asked to work on a song together. So I thought, why not try to make like a version of Extraterrestrial where it's like almost big and like festival-y, right, instead of just like weird and dark.
Right. Something that would work on the size of stages that Marshmello was on.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. Context is everything, especially whenever I like sit down to work on anything.
So even for your own stuff, your original music, are you thinking about, how will this be presented? Like, where does this fit in as you're writing it?
It's definitely in the back of my mind, but the way that I like to do it is that I just like, especially when working on my own music, I like to just get it done, and then try to find a place for it after the fact.
Right.
I don't want something to be bogged down by this like weird conceptual thing that I have forming. I'd rather like the song be done and inspire the concept instead of the other way around, I guess. I know there are people that like would say that that's backwards, but
hey man,
I think
if it works for you, it works for you.
Yeah, right.
And is the studio your happy place, or have you come to embrace the touring life? Like, what's the most fun for you right now?
Definitely have actually been having a lot of fun doing the streaming thing.
Oh, cool.
Or I guess the stream sets or whatever. Because besides that Dub Rebellion thing, also have some friends that have set up like a green screen and a little streaming spot at their house where we just put the dumbest shit on the background.
That's great.
So I mean, I've been having a lot of fun with that. Generally, though, whenever I'm in the zone on a track where everything clicks, the idea is great, I know exactly what I want to do, and I can do it, and it sounds exactly how I kind of would like to perceive it, then yeah, I don't know. That's my happy place, I guess.
I like that, man. And that's a pure thing. To me, that goes back to what you were talking about when you first figured out the guitar, right? Is when you're just in that pure zone of discovery and exploration.
Exactly.
Which, it's not to make this too woo-woo, but I think that's the closest we get in this line of work to some kind of spirituality too, right? Is where you don't know exactly what you're doing, but you know you're connecting with something, and it's all kind of a blob, to use your terminology.
Yeah. It all just somehow comes together.
Yeah. It's like magic, man. And those, I think, are kind of the most valuable moments, or at least the ones that keep you coming back.
Exactly. No, 100% agree.
So and you can interpret this any way you want to interpret it. What are some of your goals right now, either professionally or personally, anything that pops into your mind?
Big goal right now is finding a way to put out all this music in a way that makes sense.
You're sitting on too much of it?
Yeah, way too much. We got to start getting it out. I've never been one for like a big picture kind of thing, only until like recently. But like, I've always been focused on like the next step, like even back when I was first starting out, I wasn't thinking like, oh, like I want to do this and this and this with all of like, I want to play festivals. I want to like, meet so-and-so. It was more like, okay, I am at this point. What can I do to get to the next step up?
Right.
Or just the next step. Just kind of chasing the moments.
Yeah, I think that's smart, man. One foot in front of the other is the way anything gets done. And it's also, I think, that's sort of where you probably should be focused. And it's other people like, your management or something, they can look at the bigger picture, right? And sort of let you exist in the moment, which I think is where most great art comes from.
I agree. But I don't know, especially lately, I've been forming the bigger picture, and I don't know, it's slowly but surely coming together. I don't know how people will receive it, like if they're gonna be like, wow, this is really cool, or like, wow, this makes no sense at all. What are you doing?
Well, what do you mean when you say the bigger picture?
Like say with these more conceptual EPs that I have planned, I don't know, like one of them's this like really dark story of this guy that's been shipwrecked on an island. This other one's like about this cult that's trying to persuade this guy into joining them, and with like these like bright instruments and like fun times, only to slowly realize throughout the EP that like, oh, these guys are kind of fucked up. Kind of like Midsomner.
Yeah. One of my favorite movies of last year.
Yeah, like an EP version of that.
Oh,
basically.
That's great. And are you thinking about like accompanying visuals and all that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, no, like all the time. Like I've got it. Like I said, they're all the ideas are there. It's just a matter of getting it all onto a print. I don't know. Yeah, I love that, man. And I don't know. I think people will be into that. I think there's some precedent for that kind of thing. And especially, it actually kind of leads me to maybe the last thing I wanted to talk about, which we've touched on already, but is sort of your unique sound and your unique sound design and sort of where those ideas come from. Like the ideas you were just talking about, the stories and the cults, again, to me is something that I think not a lot of people are coming up with. But in terms of sonically, do you have a method, or is it really all about the experimentation for you, that you're always trying out new things to make crazy sounds? So I've found that like when trying to make the most balls to the walls sounds, there are things I have in place to kind of tame the sound so it's not like an unmixable mess. I mean, besides that though, like I just kind of do whatever. Like especially with Ableton's LFO plugin for Max for Live, being able to apply it to anything, even the tempo if you wanted to.
Right.
That's been a big like door opener for me. I don't know. There's a lot of like great, just mixing and matching different methods, like different like grain delays, grain delay, granular synthesis.
Yeah.
Just like all these things that like really glitch and destroy a sound. Like,
are you starting with audio or do you work in synths?
It varies. I've been getting really into operator lately.
Okay.
Ableton's FM synthesis. I kind of want to get back into FM8. If you remember, like way back in the day when everyone was trying to make cool sounds in FM8 because that's what they heard Skrillex use.
Right. I very much remember that period. I will say FM8, I just did not get into. I think I tried a couple times and I was like, nope, not for me.
I actually got really into it and made some really cool sounds, but I don't know, it's so like math based. It's so not music friendly,
right?
That it's really hard to use.
Yeah. But it seems like you kind of like that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Hard to use and not meant for music. Great.
Perfect. That is my bread and butter.
Well, okay, so let's wrap it up by talking about this. Then we've got the two sides, right? Is this experimental side, and then we were also talking about how you're becoming more and more interested in making songs, right? And finding the arc to a piece of music. Have you found any tricks to sort of combine those two sides of your personality?
I don't know if it's tricks. It's just continually working on it, I guess.
Yeah. Is it a matter of sort of learning the best ways to tame the experimental side and to organize it?
Yeah, I would say so. Mainly because, I don't know, I really started getting into the whole songwriting side because I guess I got bored of making like super, like, because you can make the craziest, most experimental sounds, but if there's no context for it, then it exists in this space of like, oh, that's really cool.
Right.
I want to have it exist in the space of like, that's really cool. And this song is really good.
Right. Yeah. And I think, sometimes if you have the craziest sound, the sound nobody's ever heard, if you pull it back like 5%, 10%, all of a sudden you can use it in all of these different ways in the context of a broader song, right? And then not only do you have this crazy sound, but it's in the middle of this amazing song. I mean, I'm basically just repeating what you said. But
No. Yeah, exactly. Trying to be more conscious of like tonality. I say that while like last week I wrote this probably the most atonal song I've ever made. Well, but I mean, it's a balance though, like.
And it doesn't seem like you have a problem with, not being able to come up with enough ideas.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it was like, why not just lean super into the atonality instead of just like being like super, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I've noticed that a lot of people that try to make super experimentally stuff, it feels like their song structures are almost all the same. Like they just have these like super atmospheric breaks with builds that don't really have any context besides like, oh, hey, there was like a fade in to a build. Like I'd like to think of it in the sense of like, say how Must Die has been writing his most recent stuff.
Oh man,
it's been
he's
super
on fire.
melodic. It's not only like have the drops been crazy, but the songs themselves have been really catchy and really good.
So good.
So it's like trying to think of it in that context of like having a build that comes like organically, I guess, out of like the songwriting process.
Right. And just letting it be what it is, I think is important. And I feel like that's kind of what you were getting at with what you were just saying is that, you made the atonal song and rather than deciding, well, everything now has to fit into this new mold. You say, no, well, this is just the atonal song and that's what it wants to be. So let's go hard on that idea. And then,
exactly.
Yeah. And then the next one, it's more of a song. So then we're going to lean into that.
Exactly. It's all about what the song wants. That's been my biggest thing since day one. Like, does the song want, a crazy atmospheric break? Then it should have it. But if it doesn't need it, then it shouldn't have it.
Yeah, it's all about getting out of your own way at a certain point. Mm-hmm. Which is super hard to do. But man, it's cool to see your evolution, dude. And I love all the new music, and I'm happy you're here, man. Just in general.
I'm super glad that we were able to finally do this.
Me too, man. I mean,
I feel like we've been talking about this for like months now.
Oh, dude, even longer, I think. And we just kept missing each other. I'm really enjoying this. How you feeling? You good?
Oh yeah, dude, this is awesome.
Excellent.
Love doing this shit.
Excellent. Is there anything we haven't touched on? Anything you want to talk about? Anything you got coming up you want to let people know?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Yeah. No, I think we did good.
Good job.
Yeah, good job, team.
We did a successful episode.
Good hustle.
Hooray.
Good hustle. All right, I'll wrap it up by asking the same question I always ask at the end of each one of these episodes. Just a time in your life, a moment, a memory, could be from any time when music really deeply affected you, really had an impact on you, really meant something to you. And you can interpret that in any way you want. There is no wrong answer.
Oh man, that is a lot harder than I thought it would be. I'd say probably one of my earliest memories is like the first song that I ever remember liking was I think it's called "Take My Picture" by or "Take Your Picture" by Filter.
Oh yeah, I remember that song.
Yeah, I remember like having these two little wrestling action figures that I would always play with when I was younger, and like just kept singing that song in my head over and over and over again. And I don't know, like it seemed like that's kind of how I go about most of my days now. It's just like either playing songs in my head or like writing new songs in my head.
That's a really interesting idea. I've never even thought to try to remember what was the first song that got stuck in my head. Because you're right. I mean, that's a super significant thing. And that's something that happens to literally everyone on earth. But yeah, you're right. I never thought about like when that first happens and what kind of an effect that must have.
All serious, probably one of the bigger moments that affected me.
Yeah, of course, because then, you get fixated on it, right? And your mind is picking it apart unconsciously while you're doing something else.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And I mean, for somebody who ends up being a music producer, I feel like that's a pretty slippery slope.
Yeah. It was all downhill from there.
Never got better than Filter, man.
Nope. It's hard.
Well, shout out to Filter. I don't know if you're even still a band anymore, but they had some jams.
Yeah, right. Fuck.
Well, shit, man, this has been super fun.
Yeah, no, it's been really great. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we'll, once all this dies down, we'll get together in person. Maybe I'll even feel comfortable enough to give you a hug, and we'll do round two.
We'll see.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to hug you, but we'll see how it goes. All right, buddy. Good talking to you, man.
Yeah, good talking to you, man.
All right, dude. I'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Bye.
All right, that's the show. Shout out to Tynan. Great to talk to you, man. For everybody out there listening, don't forget, hit the link in the description. Go follow Tynan. Go grab all of his new music. Stay up to date once he's back on the road again. And you can stay up to date with me too. Hit me up at Willy Joy or at back-to-back-pod on all social media. back-to-back-pod@gmail.com is the email address. And don't forget to come join the Discord. We want you to come join. We want you to come chat with us. I'm in there every single day, so come say hi. That's it for this week. Another episode in the can. You know, we are closing in on the 3-year anniversary of Back to Back. And if you're still listening, if you made it this far, all I'm going to tell you is it's going to be a good one. We got some special plans. So stay tuned for that. Have a good rest of your week. Take care of yourself. Take care of the people around you. Stay safe, and I will talk to you next Tuesday. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.